Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education that is a social match, an emotional match, an academic match, and a financial match. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach.
And I am Anika Madden, and I am a parent. This Thursday, September 19th, and welcome to episode number 86. When should you start the admissions process? In this week's news, a study finds that more AP classes may not be better. And we're in chapter 86 of 171 answers, and we're talking about when to start the college admissions process with your child. And this week's question asks if a certain AP score should be submitted to a highly selective school. And Mark kicks off his interview with Miss Tara Kalinisan. She's the admissions officer at Smith College, and they talk about the do's and don'ts in college information sessions.
Anika, I am so excited. We haven't recorded in a while.
We sure haven't.
It's one of the highlights of my week. Every week, friends, to come here and to record with Anika. Now, I can't promise all the time that the prep is always one of the highlights, but when we actually get to doing it, then I get that rush. Oh, boy. So one of the things that I want to share is a little admissions tip for the little admissions season. And this one comes via Dartmouth College. I did an information session with them 2 days ago. And the representative said over 60% of the grade in a lot of their classes is class participation. I said, excuse me, did you say multiple classes or just this one teacher? He said, no, quite a few classes, more than 60% of the grade is class participation. Then later I said, so obviously you're looking for that in the teacher recommendations. He was like, right on. So the tip for you out there is raise your hand, students, bring your voice. Because if you go to a place like Dartmouth, if you don't do it, you're not getting in. And if you do get in and you don't do it, you're not getting good grades. So that's my admissions tip.
That's interesting.
Isn't it interesting? More than 60%. Admissions vernacular time. And the word this week is study away. Study away. It's something I'm noticing a lot of schools are saying, talking about their study away. Dartmouth said it's not uncommon for our students to have more than 3 study away experiences. And one of the guys today said it, and then Smith said the same thing. And the difference between study away and study abroad is just that study away does not have to be overseas. When you say abroad, of course, you're talking about leaving the country, right? For example, Anika, the very first student I ever had that went to Davidson was back in 2007. And Davidson has this partnership with Howard University. And so she did a little study away term at Howard and was there during the election. So study away is the term of the day. So
is it always at another school, or could it be some other experience too? Like
it could be any other experience. It's just a broader term because when you say study abroad right away, that's like leaving the country, right? And some schools have exchange partnerships with other places that are not leaving the country. So it's a kind of a hot term. I don't remember it when I was in Pennsylvania, but I hear it more and more all the time now. Study away.
Cubings.
Our college spotlight later will be with Case Western Reserve. If you have the hanging power to hang in there, that'll be at the very end. And keep in mind, email us your questions at yourcollegeboundkid.com. Now, if you have a particular college you want me to highlight in the college spotlight, I can't promise I'll do it, but between schools I meet with and schools I visit is about 200 a year. And if you send a school and it's on that list, I'll be happy to do a college spotlight for it. Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
All right, Mark, this week's article is entitled Study Finds That More AP Classes May Not Be Better. And this was a fairly old article, Mark. What was this, back in 2013?
It is, but it's still important, I think. That's why Yeah, it's definitely older than the ones we normally look at, right?
Yeah, so this is in the University Gazette of University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And so UNC Chapel Hill's undergraduate office found that taking more than 5 AP courses probably doesn't prepare students any better for college. And the article cites the original purpose of AP, which was to prepare students for college level work. But now AP courses have seemed to evolve into just one of many criteria to get into colleges. And these kids, which, Mark, I did not realize that a lot of these jokers are taking 10, 11, 12 AP courses. Did not know that. Now, they did find that students who take more AP or IB courses do better in college, but only up to a certain point. And it says, I guess their magic number is 5 courses, 5 AP courses. But anything beyond that, there is no significant increase in their grade point average. But here's the deal, Mark. This article seems to be it made a few different points, and I wasn't sure which they were really trying to push. So the first one was that, okay, taking AP courses up to a certain amount does help students in college. Okay, check. Then they say that kids are taking so many courses, so it looks good on their college resumes. Like, okay, I'm trying to get into the school, so I need to take 35 AP courses.
Why you got to go all the way to 35?
Because that's what it feels like. They talk about 20. Like, what? Who is? Okay, I don't want to digress.
A little embellishment.
And then the last two is that. So they say that so the research that they're citing, they're saying that the research says that these students, yes, they perform better when they take up to a certain amount. But at the same time, they're talking about, even though they highlight this research, but they're talking about this being a criteria for schools to even try to be considered to get into them. So I don't know. It's just, I didn't totally get the overarching point or takeaway that they were trying to make.
Okay. Well, it's a fair question. So I want to read a portion of the article first, because there's some really profound stuff in here. And then let me answer your question. So just jumping right into the middle of it. Says, we started seeing students with these superhuman course loads in high school, 10, 12, 15 AP courses. And we just assumed that if taking 6 courses was good, then wouldn't 10 be even better? And wouldn't 12 be even better than that? But then they said, well, but we never really researched it. So this person, Jen Kretschmar, dug into the research that had been done on how AP as well as IB courses relate to college performance. They say there really wasn't much out there. They say because it's really a difficult study to do, partly because few people had even thought to even ask about it. So we came to feel as if it was an untested assumption. In other words, everybody just assumed if AP courses are good, then aren't more better. Almost like money. If money is good, isn't it better to have more money? Farmer, who was also in the study, said that. And it's a fairly high stakes assumption for students because admissions decisions hinge on these criteria. So just to take a break for the reading for a second, Nika, we've always said that academic rigor is one of the most important things in the assessment, right? And so if APs and IBs are seen as a proxy for academic rigor, that's what they mean, that so many admission decisions are being based on your rigor. And if this is your rigor, then this is kind of a high stakes game. So they went to Chris Wiesen, an analyst at Carolina's Odom Institute, which helps social science researchers to do rigorous data analysis. And the Institute has helped the Office of Undergraduate Admissions many times over the year to answer these kind of tough questions, such as whether female applicants are favored over males or whether applying for early action provides a better chance of getting in. This time, they wanted to find out whether students who took more AP and IB courses had better GPAs in their first year at Carolina. On average, people who take harder classes in high school may be better students already. So it's likely they'd already have higher GPAs in college. So to control for that, Kretschmar and Wiesen took into account SAT scores and high school grades. They found that students who take more AP or IB courses do better in college, but only up to, as you said, a certain point. If 2 students have similar SAT scores and similar high school grades, and one takes no AP courses at all, and the same thing really would apply to IB, and the other one takes 5 APs, the student with the 5 APs will probably have a higher GPA. And they found that one student had a 3.07 GPA, the one that took 0 APs, and the student that took 5 APs had a 3.26 GPA. So it kind of showed, there's advantage is to taking APs. But above 5 courses, there was no significant increase in GPA. So then they go on to say, from now on, when Kretschmar and Farmer read applications, they will not be looking for more than 5 AP or IB courses. There's not going to be any penalty for taking more than 5, Farmer said. Once you have your 5, you've jumped through the meaningful hoop as far as we can see. So I don't know if reading that helped explain it, Anika, but if not, you want me to kind of break it down a little?
No, honestly, it did not. But
okay, well, I appreciate your honesty. I can always count on you for that.
But no. But listen, here's the thing.
Yes.
When they say 5 AP courses, are they talking about the course of 1 year or the course of 2 years, 3 years? Like,
an AP course lasts an entire year.
And these students that are taking 12 and 13 classes at a time, are they taking 12 in 1 year?
No. So I see this a lot. I see students taking insane amounts of APs, 10 to 15, very common. But that's over the course of their whole 4 years.
Okay.
What I see, Anika, is pretty common. Students will take like 1 AP in 9th, 2 or 3 in 10th. Now, these are your better students, but it's pretty common, right? And then they'll take 5 or 6 in 11th and then 5 or 6 again in 12th. So if you add all that up, you can be at 14 APs. So they're not talking about in 1 year. They're talking over the course of 4 years. Is that probably helpful?
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Okay. So this is actually really, really great research. And the reason why I think this is really important is because part of the reason why kids feel so stressed out is because the thinking is colleges look at rigor. So therefore, more rigor is better. Therefore, pile up. The more APs, the better. And basically, this study, at least for Carolina, is debunking that. And the way they're using this in admissions is we're not going to give any more value to anybody who takes more than 5.
Okay, so take us back to the review of the application, because they're not looking at your 9th grade classes, are they? Or are they?
Okay. So one thing I want to really be clear, the word "they're not," right? We've said this a few times. There's more than 4,000 2- and 4-year schools. Any school can do whatever they want. So when you say they're not, so when we talk about highly selective admissions, there are schools who don't look at your 9th grade. One of the schools I met with this week, it was Emory. I'll tell you, they said, we have done research. And I was so impressed. And our research indicates that the 9th grade does not predict how well kids do at Emory. So therefore, we are focusing on 10th, 11th, and 12th. But there are a lot of other schools that don't do that. I mean, I know the University of California system does the same thing, but most highly selective schools look at your full entire transcript. Sure, they weight it to put more emphasis on what's recent. Like I always tell people, the last 18 months, that's going to be a substantial part of the read. First part, whatever you do in 12th and all of 11th. 10th is going to count a lot as well at the highly selective schools. 9th, less so. But 9th can still really count at certain schools. So that's a school by school thing, Anika, whether they're looking at 9th.
Right. Okay.
So my question for you is, what part is still confusing?
Well, it's not so much that it's confusing. I just want to make sure I understand what the overarching point is, because to your point, that's who is they. Like this one school says, okay, when you hit 5, that's good enough for us. So how do we know what the magic number is for everybody else?
Well, that's a really good question. And the answer is you don't know. And for most schools, there is no magic number, because this gets more complicated, because what most schools will say is they're going to judge your rigor in light of the opportunities that were available to you. We're not going to expect, not every school has all these APs. Some schools actually have policies, Anika, that restrict you from taking more than a certain number of APs. Does it trying to?
I want to say Janaea and Jalen had some restrictions around there somewhere.
Yeah, it's pretty common for schools to say, okay, stop the insanity. You can't take, and I'll be really honest, if I was a principal at a school, I would enact a policy like that, because I see the insane amounts of pressure that schools are under. And it really won't hurt you in college admissions if you articulate that really clearly on your college profile. And your college counselors let schools know, look, at our school, let's just say the policy is you can't take more than 3 in a year. Okay. And you can't take more than 3 junior year. You can't take more than 3 senior year. And you can only take, none in freshman year and 1 sophomore year. So we're not allowing more than 7, or it could be 6, whatever it is. I would do that if I was a principal, because I think that's a smart move. It's enough rigor. We see this research shows that. Now, mind you, it's only one school, but it's a pretty big school and it's a major flagship university. And chances are, if they found that research there, it would be true other places as well.
Okay.
So basically, the article is saying several things. Are APs important, or is academic rigor important if you have a chance to do APs? Yes, it is. However, it's not one of these things where the more the better. That is not true. It's good to a certain point. And after a certain point, it's diminishing returns and it doesn't have any value. the thing that I'm seeing in this, Anika, that maybe you're not, is how many people feel this need to be caught up in this rat race of having to take insane amounts of APs or they're not going to be able to get into their colleges. Right. So that's why this research really excites me. Any other questions?
Nope. Clear as mud. No,
clear as mud? Mud's not clear. Since when is mud clear? Gee,
just kidding.
I get mud on my windshield wiper when I drive in a puddle. I'm
gonna tell you, I was mostly surprised by kids taking that amount of AP class.
Well,
I just didn't
it's understandable if both of your kids, your whole framework is your two kids. You know what I mean? You're not looking at this, it's not like your college counselors. You don't see like 50, 60 kids a year or 80 kids or whatever. So your framework is your two kids. And so if both of your kids had restrictions at their schools as to the number they were allowed to take, then I can understand why this was kind of like, what's with these 10, 12, 15? Mm-hmm. It's actually quite common, especially at large suburban schools.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Okay, friends, we are in the 86th chapter of my book, and we are looking at when should I start the college admission process? Mm-hmm. Anika, you've read the chapter. What are your thoughts? What are your insights? What are your questions?
Well, let me just get to the meat of it, right? So start the full process in the month of July after 10th grade. I think I said that right. And test prep in between 10th and 11th. Like, that was just a straight up, okay, boom, 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 boom. Now, you did start with the middle school years. And I don't know, and we've talked about this before, but do you consider this like the middle school, like the exploring the interests, doing the summer extracurriculars and focusing on, just like their passions and all that stuff? Would you consider that an informal part of the process, or do you consider that a part of the process?
So that's just a semantic question, right? Do you want to call it an informal part of the process, or do you want to call it part of the process? I do think of it as part of the process, but I think of it as just like doing light exploratory work.
Okay.
So that's why I say, ideally, you want to start in middle school looking at mapping out a curriculum, looking at your interests, and make sure that you are pursuing things that are consistent with your interests. But, I'm always hesitant to say this because the person that's learning the information late, they start feeling, oh, man, I'm screwed. And it's not like that. Like, people learn this information when they learn the information. And the other thing that I can't emphasize this enough is this is going to be an individual starting point for different kids. It has a lot to do with when that kid is ready. Like, I don't believe in being college obsessed from the time you're out of the womb. I never forget when, and I don't even remember who it was, but I remember somebody saying to me, and I can remember where it was and everything, and it really hit me because I thought it was profound. And they were talking about, in elementary, you're trying to get your kid into a private school, and then you're trying to get them into a private middle school, then a private high school, and then they get them into a college. And as soon as they get into college, you're trying to get them into grad school. And then the person said to me, when do our kids ever get off the treadmill? So I am mindful of that. I don't want everything to be about like being able to not enjoy the moment and live in the moment, and explore the moment, and experience the moment. On the other hand, early bird gets the worm in this. And there's a lot of things that you can do when you start early. But here's the thing, Anika, I'll have people who, like, the parents want to hire me to work with me, and the kid might even be like end of 11th grade. And they'll be like, the kid just doesn't want to do anything, and I can't get them to do anything. And then I'll have other times where I'll have a middle schooler, and your own daughter is an example of this, Anika. Mm-hmm. So some of our regular listeners may have heard me say before that back in 2014, I developed a 10-hour college admissions video series called Game Changer. It was a 10-hour college admissions. It was like your counselor in a box. The idea was, if you don't have any access to a counselor, take this 10-hour video series. You can still get it. It's still up on one of our websites. And it walked you through the whole college admissions process. And Janaea, as a 7th grader, do you remember how she would be like, Mom, I want to go through Game Changer? Do you remember that as a 7th grader?
Yes. Flashback. Yes, I do remember.
She'd be like, Mom, I want to go through this. It came with like a 150-page workbook that you had to like watch the video and do all these questions. So your own daughter as a 7th grader was all into this stuff. Whereas some people, like, they're not there at the end of 11th. And so that's a factor here when you start, because this is not the kind of thing where you can't like make your kid do everything if they don't want to do it. The kid has to be ready. So what I said was an ideal time, in my opinion, to get real serious about the process is spring of the 10th grade. So you can take advantage of everything in the summer between 10th and 11th. This is especially true if you're applying to selective schools and if you're doing more of a national search. If you're like pretty sure you're going to stay local and commute, and you have 2 or 3 schools in mind, and you're not going to a selective school, then you can start a little later formally. But also when you start earlier, it's like a nice leisurely stroll to the airport. And I don't know about you, but I get to the airport 3 hours early when I got to take a flight. I've missed too many flights. I'm sorry. I'm not taking any chances anymore. And it is not stressful at all. I'm just chilling. And now I got this new TSA thing, TSA pre-check. Don't have to take off my laptop, my belt, anything. Just go through the short line, just chill, and then
wow.
Yeah. Then I get to the gate and I just chill and read and do stuff. And it's so relaxing. And I always see people like flying through like they're O.J. Simpson in the 70s, bulldozing people over.
So you see me and my family.
And when what happens when I'm so much in this college admissions world, when I see those people, I think that's the college, that's the person who starts the college process in the senior year. That's exactly what I think.
Oh my goodness.
I do. So I think that, I can't really say an exact time to start because it's partly when the person is ready. I have lots of people that I push back, though, if I think they're too college obsessed. And sometimes what I'll do, if like, let's say I have people that want to start in middle school. A lot of times I'll just start working just with a parent, just alone, because a parent is managing the child. You're really the manager of your child. And I'll educate them on how everything works so that they can sort of manage.
Okay, that's an interesting concept there.
Yeah, I'm doing that with several people right now.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just meet quarterly, or we either meet every other month or we meet quarterly. And it's like a check-in to make sure that you're doing all the right things so that you won't lose out on opportunities.
Wow.
But to me, it's like, when is somebody ready? But it's definitely not. The problem is, if you're looking at competitive schools, nowadays, you're getting dinged if you don't apply early action to competitive schools. Early action is increasingly moving back into October. So if you got to have everything ready by October 15th or November 1st of the senior year, think about what you have to have in place then. You have to have your testing done, okay, all your applications done. You have to know what schools you're interested in. One of the advantages of starting early is that sometimes you can actually take advantage of where you are already going to be traveling anyway. Like one of the families I started working with in 9th, they travel a fair amount. And so they were able to visit colleges when the mom was already naturally traveling for business. Because sometimes she'll take your child along with her on trips and the kid is all in. And at first I pushed back. I'm like, it's kind of early. But then the kid started emailing me a lot. She was all into it. I had them visit like 5 or 6 schools just to get a feel. Like really light visits. Let's just like put our little toe in the water and see what you're thinking. And then the students started sending me a lot of emails. Like, I really like this. I'm like, I told the mom, because originally I said to her, let's just go really, really slow. We'll start in spring of 10th. And I told her recently, I said, you know what? Your daughter's actually ready to start Thanksgiving of 10th. Now, that's not normal. But when I have a student that's ready like that, so to me, the bottom line is, when is the student ready? And do they have this in proper perspective? Are they like college obsessed and they don't have balanced excellence in their life? Those are the questions that I ask myself. Anika and I are so grateful for everyone who has financially supported our podcast. It allows us to pay our staff and cover our other auxiliary expenses involved in having a weekly professional podcast.
At the start of every month, we're going to start sending a special gift to anyone who financially supports your college-bound kid.
I will be sending our donors this bonus content once a month directly to your email. The bonus content will be between 10 to 15 minutes in length. Usually it will be a college-related topic that I'm passionate about. Occasionally, it'll be another bonus hot topic in the news segment. Sometimes it'll be an answer to a question that one of our listeners submits to us via email.
And you'll receive these monthly audio blogs for a gift of any amount. We know that $5,000 to one person is $5 to someone else, and we don't want your budget to be a hindrance to you receiving this additional bonus content. So if you want to support our show, just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and click the donate button. And if you've already financially supported our podcast, you will automatically start receiving this bonus content via your email.
This bonus content is our way of letting our financial supporters know in a tangible way how much we appreciate you. And if you have any questions at all about our monthly bonus content, just send your questions our way. That's to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Once again, questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com.
Well, I think you're going to be so proud of me because
I'm
the
always
other
proud of
day
you.
I sent John's teacher, this time for real, because I sent John's teacher, I was like, listen, I would like to begin to assess John's strengths and his weaknesses. Can we please?
Oh, you applied last week's lesson right away. No, you're right. I am extra proud.
I was like, oh my God. It's just it's fascinating to me that as deep as I am into all of this stuff, I just never had that direct conversation with any of their teachers. And so, yeah, I'm excited about that thing. Like, I'm really making an extra, you know how we are with these kids.
Right.
First one, second one, third one. Okay, now I get it. And I'm really, going to be really targeted with his extracurricular activities. And it's more so too, because we're so new to North Carolina, still don't know so much about the system. We had a meeting tonight that was just like way overwhelming, just trying to figure stuff out, like how to plug in. But yeah, so I feel like I'm starting with John.
That's
the
really
whatever
good.
we want to call it, formal and informal process.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons why I like to start doing a full curriculum plan in middle, math is one of those things. So once again, it is very, very different. We're talking apples and oranges. Like, look, there's open enrollment colleges out there that accept every student, right? So a lot of stuff I'm talking about is for students that are more ambitious and that have done well in school and they're aspiring to more competitive schools. If it's not the case, then a lot of this stuff can be a little different. But if you're looking at doing that, if you don't get to calculus, there's a lot of schools that, I'm not going to say you're automatically dinged because, once again, we've talked about this before, right? You could have a very unique hook and your situation is different, meet an institutional priority for the school. But if you're like sort of average applicant and you're applying to a highly competitive school and you don't get to calculus, that's not good. And so what happens is in the 9th grade, if you just take algebra 1 and then every school is different. So some schools do geometry in 10th, some do algebra 2 in 10th, and they do geometry in 11th. But you're either going to have a sequencing of algebra 1 in 9th, geometry in 10th, algebra 2 in 11th, and pre-calculus in 12th. Or you're going to have like geometry and algebra 2 are flipped around. Either way, you only get to pre-calculus. That's going to make a big difference. So that's why
Mark, let me ask you this, Mark, because I know we're talking about the admissions process. That's what this whole podcast is about. And it's mostly directed to highly selective schools. I get that. But what I've been thinking a lot about is that it's not just applying to the selective schools. I think it's relevant to applying to any school. Like, we want our kids to take the right amount of math classes because they need to excel regardless of where they go. So, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I need to blurt that out. But yeah, I feel so much value in this outside of just the school selection.
Yeah, I think you're making the point that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but these skills that students are learning are valuable skills that have application in real life. If it's your writing, you want to be a real good writer, not just to get into college because it helps you in life. If it's public speaking, it's because it helps you in life. If it's math, if it's analysis, synthesis, I think that's what I'm hearing you say, right? Yes, no?
Well, it's also going to help you in the school that is not as highly selective as well.
Right.
Because you still want to thrive in the other schools. So just that.
No, it's a good point. But the point I was making is that literally it can be the difference between you getting in where you want to go and not getting in where you want to go. Not because you weren't capable, but because you never really sat down and had a plan. And that plan might be, you know what, in order to get to calculus, that means we're going to have to take math over summer because we're starting out in algebra 1. That's just the level that we're at. And I'm not implying that everybody has to get to calculus. I'm definitely not. There's certainly all kinds of opportunities if you don't. But I also will say that you're going to cut off certain opportunities if you don't do that. And even other things, like if you don't have a plan, There's schools that are going to ding you, and every state is different. Like in Georgia, you need to take 4 years of science. So you got to sit down and have a plan. What's the plan to get 4 years of science? There are some colleges that don't look at you favorably if you don't take 4 years of foreign language. And there's quite a few that don't look at you favorably if you don't take 3. So when you sit down and you have a whole plan, you map all that stuff out, you prevent yourself from losing out on opportunities just by curriculum alone. Yeah. And that's just the course planning part, right? The other thing is, a lot of more selective schools now, they're really looking at when you did an activity, did you do it just in 12th or just in 11th and 12th? Or have you done it 10th, 11th, and 12th? And even better than that would be 9th through 12th. And so they're looking at that as a reflection of what you're going to bring to our campus. And so the sooner you can figure out what your activities are that you're good at. Listen, I'm okay with 9th grade. Use 9th grade to explore a bunch of things, explore a bunch of clubs, explore a bunch of different things. But ideally, 10th through 12th, I like to see people stick with similar activities. It certainly helps you in the college admission process. So I'm just saying these are all the kind of ways where advanced planning helps.
Right.
Anything else? Or are we all planned out?
No, I think, have I said this before? I'm going to send John to you to stay until he selects his college and I'm going to come pick him up. Go drop him off when y'all decide where he's going to go.
I have this mom I'm working with. I'm not going to say what state. I just say it's in the Northeast. And she's like, can you come live with us?
Yes, Mama.
No,
yes.
No, I'm serious. And guess what? I have to take a trip there to visit some customers. So literally, I'm going to stay at their place. And she's like, you might regret that. She said, because at 3 a.m, you might turn around and I might be at the foot of your bed asking you questions.
Right there funny. With you, Mama. Hey, so whatever works for us.
Whatever works. Whatever floats your boat. It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, Mark, our question this week comes from Miss Meredith. Meredith is in Phoenix, Arizona. Wow. How is it out there, Meredith? All right. So first, Mark, let me say to Meredith that, yes, we did make it through your entire email. That was her final point. Like, thank you so much for making us. And we appreciate all of your comments and for sharing in such great detail. We really do. And of course, Mark eats up every bit of it. What I am going to do is I'm going to read only sections of it, and sharing most of the parts I think would be most helpful to the larger audience.
Sure.
So here we go. All right. So hi, Mark and Anika. Thank you so much for this podcast. It has been extremely helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You are quite welcome. She says, unfortunately, I didn't realize that APs were so important to college admissions until right before my daughter's 11th grade year. She is a rising senior. She has always taken advanced and honors math and science, and she is a straight A student. But I assumed APs were only for kids who wanted college credit in high school. She then goes on to say her daughter studied hard for the AP exam, and even so much that her teacher recognized her at a school award ceremony for her dedication and for her hard work. She got her AP score back, and it was a 3. Her daughter is embarrassed by her score and says that there's no way that she's going to send that score to the colleges she wants to apply to, which are very selective, especially because she wants to major in biology. Meredith told her daughter that 3 is a decent score, and to not turn it into the colleges may make them wonder if she got an even lower score, like a 1 or a 2. So my husband and I don't know what selective schools want, and so I have no clue what she should do. If this was your daughter, would you recommend she share her biology score of 3, or is it better to not submit it at all? Mark.
So the one thing that you didn't say in the question that was in Meredith's question that I'd like you to add, she does mention some of the schools.
Yes. And you know what? When you said that, I just scrolled down. I was like, ooh, I didn't mention the schools that she said.
Yeah, I mentioned them because that's going to have a role in what I'm going to say.
So I'm going to state that, and then I'm going to make one final remark from her question, and then I'll let you take over.
Okay.
So she is applying to places such as Middlebury, Washington U, Wash U, and Yale, plus small selective liberal arts schools. Our state university will be her safety school, both academically and financially. And so finally, Mark, I want to go ahead and add this on because it's kind of a second prong to her question, but I do want to go ahead and put it out.
Sure.
She says also next year, her daughter will be taking 2 more AP classes in physics and calculus. How important is it for her to take those AP exams if she gets accepted to one of her reach or dream schools before the AP exams?
Okay, so I don't think I've ever done this before in 86 episodes, but I'm going to answer the second question first because it's easy, and then we can get to the first one.
Okay.
So she's been accepted. Does she need to take the exams? Absolutely not. She can take the exams for two reasons. One, there are colleges that give you credit still for AP exams, not as much as they used to, but there's still lots of schools that do that. And so you can actually get college credit if you do well on AP exams. Other than that, once you've been accepted, colleges, they're not going to care. They couldn't care less. So one reason to take them would be to try to get college credit. Many colleges that don't give you actual college credit for doing well on AP exams will allow you to exempt out of certain required courses in college that line up with those AP exams. So that is another advantage to taking the actual AP exams and doing well on those exams. Another reason to take them would be if you just want to really use them as a test of your content mastery. But will they make a difference? No. So that's completely 100% up to you. So that's the second question. Anything on that, Anika, or can we get to the first one?
No, I think we get to the first.
All right. So this question was really interesting because when this question came across, our regular listeners know that I travel a lot, I visit a lot, I go on a lot of visits to colleges. And over a short period of time, I had 5 really selective colleges that I went to. Coast Guard Academy, Harvard, Stanford, Smith, and Penn. Okay, all either late spring or summer. So I'm saying all that because it's a lead into what I'm going to say here. So I'm not going to say which of those 5 schools that I was at because I have to be careful with what I say on this podcast, especially as our listenership grows, because you never know who's listening. And I never want to violate anybody's trust. I never want to say something that I don't think somebody would want me to put out there in the public airwaves. So all that preamble is to say I was at one of those 5 places when this email came across as a question for our listener. And I'm not saying which one. The only person that knows which one, even Anika, you don't even know. The only person that knows is Meredith, because I emailed her back. I'm like, I'm at such and such school right now. You know what? I'm going to ask them. So anyway, I said, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to take it right to the school. So I was at one of those 5 schools, and they had a session. They had this thing where just all us counselors in here. And they had this thing where go put your questions for our all admission leaders, like go, they do this thing like go pin your questions like on the board kind of thing with a little post-it. So that's what they wanted us to do. Go pin your questions on the board with the post-it, and then we'll like take them up and during times throughout the whole day. So I knew this question was one I couldn't do that too, because you get a different answer a lot of times in front of the whole group than you get individually. So I was having breakfast with one of the admission officers, and I said, I have a question for you, but I don't want to ask it in front of the group. He said, go ahead. What is it? So I told him the question. And he was very honest with me. And he said, well, first he said, do you want the real answer or do you want the PC answer?
Uh-oh.
And he was like, uh-oh, where are we going here? Anytime you say that, right? Uh-oh. Yeah. We dump it in the deep. I went deep on this one. I said, I want the real skinny. And then I told him, I intentionally didn't ask it in front of the group. And you know what he said? He said, I wouldn't have answered it the same way in front of the group anyway, the way I'm going to answer it now. So he validated that decision.
Wow.
And then he said, for our institution, you should not submit a 3 on an AP. And here's one thing that a lot of people don't know. I've talked to a lot of admission officers about this because this question Meredith had is really common because it kind of goes like this. Well, if I submit a 3, it's going to hurt me because a 3 doesn't seem amazing for highly selective schools. But if I don't submit it, then they're going to think I got a 1 or a 2. And that's basically what she's asking, right? So I've talked to so many college admissions officers, Anika, and I've asked them, if a student does not submit an AP score, I've even said, if a student submits all these APs and then they don't submit a couple over here, will you assume they get a 1 or a 2? And you know what I consistently hear? Like 8 out of 10 times, even more sometimes than 8 out of 10. You know what they say, Anika? Guess.
What's that?
They say, we do not judge you at all if you don't submit a score. Not whatsoever. It's a non-factor.
So I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. So how do they know that the child is taking the AP exam?
Because it's on the curriculum. It's on the transcript. On the transcript lets you see what
The
courses they
exam?
take.
Like, I mean, I know you can take the class and not take the exam.
Oh, the exam. Sorry. They know by the transcript that you've taken the course.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scores get submitted from the college board, to the school the same way that SAT scores get submitted from the college board to the school. And sometimes some high schools actually put AP scores on the bottom of transcripts, but that's not that common.
Okay.
So you get it so they can look at the transcript. They see you took AP history. They see you took AP world. They see you took Calc A, B, BC, whatever, physics, chem, bio, whatever. There's 2 different bios. They can see the courses you took, and then either scores come in or they don't come in. So why do you think that a college would say, is I hear this 8 out of 10 times when I ask this question, and maybe more closer to 85%, that, there's like 10 or 15% that say, well, we probably figured out what's going on. There's probably a 1 or 2, but that's a small percentage, less than 20. Why do you think most of them say we just do not judge at all?
Because you're not required to take the exam, right? Well, no, let's stop there because, I'm kind of thinking out loud now. So if I take the class, but I elect not to take the exam, then I just didn't take it. So there is no score to report. So what will be my purpose in not taking the exam? Is it like just a default that people should know that they should take the AP exam? Or I don't know.
So a lot of times people are going to want to take an AP exam because you can get college credit.
Mm-hmm.
So you could very easily make the argument that why would you not take the exam? You had a chance to get college credit and you chose not to do it. Oh, you probably did take it and you just didn't submit your score. Oh, I get what's going on here. Why would that not be the way most, at least highly selective colleges think?
Well,
any idea?
Let me tell you something, Mark. I'm going to be honest. Back in the day, I did not know that you got college credit for AP exams. It's been a minute, but I had no clue. So I wasn't like obsessing over it with Jalen.
Okay.
So I don't know. Do they understand that I don't know how common that is.
We're talking about college admissions officers. They know their AP policies. So the 2 biggest reasons why colleges tell me they just do not judge you whatsoever. One is the test costs about $100 a pop. And so what I consistently hear is, how do we know you didn't have financial issues and you didn't take it for financial reasons? And we're just not going to judge you.
Okay.
And another thing I hear them say is, how do we know you just didn't get sick that day? Like, it's not fair for us to just assume you took it and did poorly. So I
guess that was my point. Yeah. I don't know.
But I think that most people I work with, that's surprising to them. They think that obviously you're not going to sweat all the way through this hard AP test and not only get college credit or test out of classes. Why would you not do that? So obviously you took it and didn't do well and didn't submit it. That's what most people think. This is usually surprising to them. So one reason you don't need to submit it is because in most cases, they're just not going to judge it. But there's another reason, and this is what's confusing to people. This came up in one of my sessions this week with the school. Actually, one of the admissions officers actually asked the question to students. They said, what's a passing score on the AP? And all the students in the room knew. They said a 3. So this is what has been considered passing traditionally. A 3 is considered passing the AP, and a 1 or 2 is considered failing the AP. So that's why people think I should submit a 3 or higher because I passed. And I hate how that term got out there. I don't even use that term passing. Instead of thinking of a passing AP score, I prefer to people to think of a qualifying AP score. What's a qualifying AP score? In other words, what's a score that qualifies you to either get college credit or to exempt out of other prerequisites? And you can look on each college's website and they will tell you. In fact, just today, I was in a college admission session. Anika, I'm trying to think what school that was. It was either today I was with Winthrop and Seton Hall and College of Charleston. So it was one of those 3. And they passed out their form for all of their AP tests, and it showed, I should grab it. It's like 6 feet away, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. All this ruffling noise and all this stuff. But it showed okay, for this class, you need a 4. For this, you need a 3. For this, you need a 5. And they were just, giving it to me. So 3 has been considered a passing score, but really a qualifying score is what matters. So that's another thing that adds to the confusion. But I do need to say, correct. And then for every test is different, a certain percentage of, for some exams, less than 5% of people get 5s. Some of them, higher percentage get 5s. There's a lot to it. It's not like it's equally as easy to get a 5 in every single one of the exams. And a 5 is hard, okay? You've mastered, remember, an AP exam is supposed to be a freshman college course. You've showed that you've mastered a freshman college course. Now, Anika, one thing I want to emphasize, there are a lot of very selective schools, and I can think of many that come to mind. Very selective schools. I'm talking about schools that take less than 1 in 5 applicants with most of the kids in the top 5% of the student body that will say a 3 or better should be submitted. But the reason why in this particular case it's important is because of how selective some of those schools were on her list that she mentioned, Meredith mentioned. And there's one other point, and this is really important, and this is my last point, unless you have any questions about anything. So when Meredith was talking about her daughter, she said she got the 3 in biology. And do you remember how she said that she wants to major in biology?
Mm-hmm.
So this is extremely important because what colleges often do, holistic ones, is they evaluate your curriculum, your test scores, your transcripts, your rigor, your grades in light of what your declared major is. It's a term called fit to major. It's a very common thing. So in other words, if you look like you want to be a math major, I better see some high scores in math. I better see some high grades, a high math SAT. But if you want to major in English, I can be maybe a little bit more forgiving in that because you're not going to take that many classes. So in this case, biology was the intended major as well. So that also magnifies the fact that a 3 for a highly... I'm just going to say this. At the most selective schools, a 3 is just not a great score. At the most selective schools, it's just not. They want 4s and 5s.
So let me throw a complex question at you.
Sure.
So she wants to be a biology major.
Yep.
Let's just say she took AP biology and AP history.
Mm-hmm.
She got a 3 on biology and she got a 4 on history. Should she submit her history score?
Yeah, I recommend submitting all 4s and 5s.
Okay, regardless of the major.
Yes.
So it's specific to her case now. If this biology aspiring biology student, college student, has a 4 on her history, she needs to submit that 4 on her history and leave that biology alone.
Yeah, that's my advice to anybody. Submit your 4s and your 5s, but don't submit your 3s to most schools, but not the most selective of the selectives. They don't see a 3 as a good score.
Okay. Gotcha.
And most of the schools won't judge you. Now, I can think of somebody, I'm not going to mention him by name because he hasn't given me permission. And he has told me that, Mark, when I don't see scores, I assume you didn't score it. You didn't turn it in because you'd bombed it. So I don't want to say everybody's that way, but I've been doing my own little informal surveys of this kind of thing with people. And most of the schools tell me we just don't judge. If it's not there, we don't judge. Because how do we know that, that your grandmother didn't die and you were at a funeral or you were just too distraught? And we're just not going to judge you. It's not there.
Excellent question, Meredith. Thank you so much.
So, Anika, before we do talk about the interview, there's one thing I want to say. So last week, I know you remember I talked about the 8 things I wished admissions officers would and should and could tell people. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And 2 things I want to say really quickly. One is, I thought of one other one. I wish they could tell students that, those mailers that you get, well, we mail about 75,000 and we're going to take about 2,000. So don't think that because you're getting all these mailers, you're getting in. So first I want to get that one out there. So I wish I could say that's one if I wish I thought of that. But what I really want to say is when I went back and listened to that episode, I kind of felt like I made admissions officers sound a little bit like used car salespeople, like hucksters. And nothing could be further from the truth. You can tell I hold the profession in such high regard. Like, to me, if someone says they want to be an admission officer, that's like saying they want to be a minister or a doctor and go work in third world countries and help people. Like, it's that high of a calling. And most of the admission officers that I know, they are awesome. They love kids. They go into this profession to help kids and love kids. And they're doing their absolute best to be honest. And a lot of them make under 50,000, depending on the school they work at. And they just love kids and they're just there to help people. And a lot of times, some of the business stuff that I shared, a lot of times admission officers don't even know some of that stuff's happening behind the scenes. And a lot of times that's some of the reasons why some of them quit when they find out, like, that, what did I call it last week? How the sausage was made.
Too much sausage.
Remember that? Remember that?
Way too
So
much
I just want to say that, and a lot of them, this week I had 3. They were so awesome. I had one admission officer that visited, and they brought 3 students with them. And they said, students, tell everything to the kids. The good, the bad, the ugly, just put it out there. They're just totally, totally, totally honest. I had another one, and a student said, this is my grade point average. These are my scores. Should I go? What do you like? Do you think your school would be a good school for me? And the admission officer was totally honest. They said, I'm going to be honest with you. You're not going to get any money from us. If that's your profile, you're better staying in state if money's important. So a lot of them are really honest. And I just want to kind of present that other side because I felt it was a little imbalanced.
Oh, thank you. On their behalf.
And that is a perfect segue into our interview, because our interview is with one of my former students who embodies passion for the work and love of kids. And I'm super excited to introduce you to Tara. And in part 1, Tara is going to talk about her background, how she got involved in both K-12 admissions and college admissions. And then she's going to talk about the do's and the don'ts you should and shouldn't do at an information session. And she's going to include both the larger type of information sessions, like when you visit the college, as well as the small ones when she's on the road. She's going to talk about the importance of the questions that you ask. And she's going to share a couple of her pet peeves that sometimes parents do at info sessions. So listen and enjoy.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, I am so excited today about this interview. We have one of my former students who is now an admissions counselor at Smith College. I'm with Tara Kalinisan. Welcome to the Your College Bound Kid podcast, Tara.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Can you believe we're doing this? Like, who would have thought this, 15 years ago, right?
I think it might even be more than 15, but yes, I definitely would not have guessed that in the, TEAC office those many years.
Yes. So why don't you give us your background, Tara, and, start with your upbringing and all the way up until, why don't you stop really when you were doing private day admissions, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Sure. So grew up, born and raised in the Bronx with my family, my mother and my 3 siblings. At around 7th grade, I was accepted into the TEAC Fellowship program in New York, which is an incredible academic program for academically gifted students in New York City in lower income, underprivileged communities. They help us with summer classes, trainings, test help, pretty much everything that any student would need while they're preparing for both high school and college. And they also guide us on the path to independent school admissions and through college admissions. So that was really helpful. After my time, or rather through my time at TEAC, I was accepted to Westtown School, obviously, thanks to you, Mark, and all the hard work that I think everyone in the admission office does at these schools. Westtown was one of the best experiences I've ever had, one of the best decisions I've ever made for myself, even though I was only 13 years old. It was definitely a great decision. From Westtown, I moved on to Muhlenberg College, where I was a dance major, philosophy minor. Another phenomenal decision. And another reason why I got into admissions was really thanks to your work, Mark, and to the work at Cindy in the admission office at Muhlenberg. Both of you really helped to kind of craft this person that now loves what she does in admissions, really works for my students to advocate for them as best as I can. After I graduated Muhlenberg in 2011, moved back home, did a few odds and ends jobs while I figured out what to do. And then actually with the help of TEAC was able to find a job at the Spence School in New York, which is an all-girls independent school on the Upper East Side. I worked at Spence for about 4.5-ish years. Another incredible experience. It was really wonderful. At Spence, I was able to be an advisor for some of the most incredible students I've ever met in my entire life, and really get an insight into at least the independent school admissions process from K through 12, get a look at what we're looking for, at least in the New York area, and then be able to use that information to propel me forward.
Fantastic. And, you're right. I was thinking, Tara, I think I met you 17 years ago now.
Yes.
You were like the 12-year-old in the seventh grade.
Yes.
Well, Tara's being really humble. She's giving me the credit, but I tell her this. She had the best interview of any student that year. So she kind of talked her way in of their charisma. Oh, good for you. And so why don't you share some of the different admission responsibilities that you had at Spence? Because I know your role expanded sort of, as you stayed there longer and longer and into various roles, and then transition. Why don't you walk us from there up until kind of what you're doing now today?
Absolutely. So at Spence, I was originally the administrative assistant to the admission office, and it kind of morphed into what we call just the admissions assistant. My role really wide ranged in its responsibilities. So I, did everything from answering phones, being one of the first faces or voices that families heard when they contacted the Spence School. I also helped set up and organize our admission events. In addition to that, I worked on data collection and analyzation for our kindergarten assessments. And I was also in charge of our student tour guides, which was an incredible group of students who volunteered their time to give tours all year, really, to students and families that came to visit Spence. So I loved working for that team. It was a phenomenal team. And it was a great experience. In addition to working in the admission office, however, I also worked outside of the admission office as part of the greater Spence community. So I was an advisor to ALAS, the Afro-Latina Alliance at Spence. I was also the advisor to Booster Squad, which is the hip-hop dance team. So I spent some of my evenings, weekends, and even lunch periods with the students, both advising them on kind of academic and personal life situations while they were at Spence, and then, of course, helping them with their dance routines and practices. I was also a very close assistant to one of our assistant directors of admission with her separate program that she had in the lower school for parents and guardians of children of color at Spence. And so I typically worked with her. They met about once a month, and I would be there kind of keeping the younger students entertained while their parents were in a meeting. And that was a lot of fun for me too, especially as the students moved some from, lower and middle school into upper school. I got to see them a little more often. So that was great.
So I'm sure some people are wondering, how do you go from K-12 admissions to college admissions?
Yes. So what happened was I found that my time as an advisor was the most fulfilling time for me. The chances that I got to speak with students, to hear what they had to say, to hear them advocating for themselves really was what propelled me forward and made me want to be that person that caught them on the other end with regards to college admissions. And so we fast forward a few years and I got myself here at Smith College. It really was an incredible opportunity that arose. It kind of combined everything that I could ever love in one position. So I am an assistant director of admission here at Smith College, and I'm also part of the multicultural recruitment team at Smith College. And there are 3 of us on this team, but it really kind of encompassed everything that I would want with regards to admission work.
So Tara, one of the things that, the more I think about it, you're a great example. I'm always telling people how what you major in college is not necessarily what you'll end up doing in your life. So
Sure.
Here you are, a dance philosophy major. I think you've already shared a little bit how you've been able to integrate some of the dance into the work you did at Spence. Do you find you use your philosophy at all in any way?
I think philosophy comes into play just in a way that I'm able to think about things, move certain things around. I think it's just a general way of thinking that really helps me to maybe offer a different perspective, especially when schools like Smith and like these wonderful other established, institutions, we have so many phenomenal traditions. But sometimes we might need to look at how we've done things and maybe revamp them for the new years, especially as our students change, as the times change. So I think that my philosophy knowledge kind of gives me the ability to have a little bit more of an open mind when looking at how we do things.
See, so parents that don't think if your child's to major in philosophy or dance that that it's a dead end street, because there are jobs out there if you know how to use your background, which is
Absolutely.
Great.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
Okay, friends, the recommended resource for episode 86 is a classic book that when it came out a few years ago, it was a bombshell. It went viral. And the book is called How Children Succeed. And in this book, authored by Paul Tough, he actually looks at the research. Like, what is it that actually determines who's going to be successful and do well in life? And what he does is he debunks the idea that it's IQ. He talks about our obsession with test scores is based on the fact that we actually believe that these tests are predictive of what people will accomplish. And he relies on the best research by psychologists, educators, and neuroscientists to show what is it that actually does determine success. The subtitle of the book, Grit, Curiosity, and the Hidden Power of Character. We're going to link both the book, and I'm also going to link Paul Tough giving a 51-minute speech that's up on YouTube. So if you're not a reader, but you want to hear him delivering a lecture, you can get the information that way. But highly recommend How Children Succeed. It was required reading for all of the teachers and counselors at KIPP where I work. So we're going to transition and we're going to talk about our topic of the day. And it's really timely because this is the season when a lot of students are doing this. And our topic of the day is how you can stand out at college fairs, information sessions, and interviews. And so I know, Tara, you do all of these. In fact, one of the real highlights for me was when I visited Smith very recently. And I got to see Tara in action. You were doing the info session. Yeah. I had smiles from cheek to cheek. My camera was out. And yeah, I did blast those photos all over LinkedIn and Facebook. Yes, I did. It was great. It was like I went from being the teacher to the student, and I enjoyed every second of it. So I know you've been doing a lot of info sessions, and I know you've done a lot of fairs, and I know you also do interviews on the road. So why don't we start out with information sessions? Sure. And what have you learned about students and parents from the different information sessions that you've done?
Sure. Well, one of the biggest things I've learned is that the audience really varies. Sometimes students and parents are coming into our info sessions kind of a completely blank slate. They know some very general tidbits, but they're really there to get as much information as possible. Others have their own preconceived notions that may be challenged or may be affirmed for them. But a lot of the time, I think that what students get from our information sessions, or what I see from families and students' information sessions, is that they really do pick up on the core qualities of who we are as an institution and what we're looking for.
Now, people spend a lot of money, parents and students, and time flying all across the country, even internationally. Mm-hmm. So when you get to an information session, you want to maximize the time. And I guess you should probably mention how information sessions can be both at Smith as well as on the road. I'll let you kind of comment on that. But how do you feel a student can best maximize the opportunity to attend an information session?
One of the best ways a student can maximize the opportunity of information and even kind of stand out a little bit is to definitely be engaged, follow along, asking thoughtful questions, and show that they're interested. Even if they're doing something as taking notes, they might not have all of the information that they already know, but they're taking down notes. And that's really, really important, especially because most of us will also hand our cards out at the end of our information sessions. I think it's really important that students are willing to grab our card. Even if you don't use it, it's still a little note in our mind that like, A, we probably did a good job, and B, you are interested in learning more. Those are the things that I think stand out the most when I'm doing info sessions on campus. When I'm doing info sessions on the road, it's typically has been when I'm doing my school visits. And those might be smaller one-on-one groups or just a few students, but those things still should be happening. They still should be engaged. They still should be following along and asking thoughtful questions about what they really are looking for in their college experience.
Yeah, so I'd like to really hone in on a couple of things you said recently. One, which was engaged, and two, asking thoughtful questions. So do you feel as if a student can ask good questions versus bad questions? Are there good questions to ask? Are there bad questions to ask? What can you share about the type of questions that are asked that make somebody maybe stand out versus make them not stand out?
I think that some of the questions that students can ask that would be a little bit more engaging are asking about what support systems we have on campus. I think it's important to find out what we have on campus. I think really it's about asking questions that put you on campus and allow me to see you here. If you're asking questions about how strong our STEM program is or how strong our English program is, every college is going to tell you that we have a phenomenal STEM or English program. And for the vast majority, we probably all do have incredible STEM and English programs. I think that it's more important to hone in on things that are very particular to you. And that helps me to see that you're really thinking about your experience that you would have when you get to campus.
Do you feel that there are times where a student stood out so much that you actually remembered them when it came to reading their file? You remembered them either from, your experience of maybe the questions they asked or maybe how they interacted with you after the session? Or do you feel like, no, you kind of forget everybody and you don't really remember anybody that you meet?
Oh, no, there are definitely students that stand out. The info sessions, I think it's a little bit harder to stand out because we are speaking to kind of one large group and we're just trying to get out this information to the students. But the students that I've had stand out to me or experiences I've had stand out to me have been at college fairs or events put on by some CBOs.
Let's talk about the opposite. Any don'ts that, don't do this at an info session. Please don't. And this could be student or parent.
Yes, of course.
Pet peeves.
Yes, pet peeves for info sessions. Noticeable latecomers. Of course, things happen. We run into traffic. We totally understand that you might be late to our info session. But similarly, when you're going into a classroom, if you're taking a class, you don't want to be the noticeable latecomer. You want to kind of slink your way in, sit down, and then kind of get yourself settled so that you don't disrupt the person who's speaking, nor do you disrupt anyone who's trying to listen intently. The other thing that has happened a couple of times, it's a pet peeve of mine at least, is shouting out questions or even answers. I have had one parent ask a question and then I wasn't sure of the answer, and then another question looked it up on their phone in the middle of the info session and then shouted out the answer later on after I moved on. So it was a little bit weird of a kind of interaction when that happened. And then I think some other pet peeves are really, obviously, try not to fall asleep or slouch.
Have you had that happen?
Yeah, I've seen some dozing happen. I try to be as engaging as possible. I usually try to be a bit humorous too, and I think we all do. But I think at times, of course, that 2:00 info session, that's right around the time where lunch has settled in and we're all feeling kind of warm and cozy. I think that it can happen, but I think it's important to remember those positives, right? Those ways of maximizing that opportunity and being engaged and following along. So trying to keep yourself awake when you're in the info session is definitely good.
So my biggest one, because I take students, particularly in my day job at KIPP, I take students on college tours. Mm-hmm. We travel together. And my biggest one is students being on their phone. That's my biggest one, when they're on their phone, when they're supposed to be engaged. And then my other one is when they're talking to each other. Mm-hmm. When, is that something that you experience, or is it rare? Do you see a decent amount of that?
I honestly have not seen much of that. I think the only times that I've ever really noticed students on their phones during info sessions or students talking to one another during info sessions, they're either younger students that have come to visit and maybe aren't really thinking about the college process yet, or there are times in the info sessions where I will make a joke and so they'll chat with each other for a moment after the joke, which is fine. But otherwise, I really haven't seen much of that use, which I appreciate. Everyone kind of stays off their phone during the info session.
I don't know what you're doing in Smith, but you're attracting the right applicants. This is like a problem when I take kids, but it's all good. Good for you. So before we transition to college fairs, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what your territory is? Later, we're going to talk about what you do really on the road in a little more detail. But why don't you share, and maybe you should even share the concept of territories because people may not understand that. Sort of explain how admissions offices are divided and sort of what your territories are, Tara.
Absolutely. So my territories this year are New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Illinois. We separate the kind of entire world into different territories for our counselors to visit. We'll do school visits, we'll do fairs, we'll do CBO visits. It's really a chance for us to get really knowledgeable about a particular region, particular schools, so that when we get to our reading process and our committee process, we're able to help advocate for students. You know, if there's a student who may not be doing incredibly well, but we think they're still very strong students, we can look at the school that they're attending and know this is a particularly challenging school where, no student gets above, an A- in any course. And that's something that we're able to do because we become very knowledgeable about the places that we go to.
Awesome. Love it. Love it.
Next week in the news, surge in number of colleges cutting tuition. And we'll be in chapter 87 of 171 answers, and we'll be discussing how admissions committees make decisions. And next week's question asks about age consent for younger kids to go to college. And Mark continues his interview with Ms. Tara Kalinisan, and she's the admissions officer at Smith College. And they're going to be talking about what you need to know around college fairs and college admission interviews.
Okay, Anika, I've been promising a review of Case Western Reserve. So many students I meet with, they want to go to a large city for school, and they want to go to an East Coast large city between DC and Boston. And if they will look outside, and those schools are all super competitive. It's supply and demand. Not everybody can go to Boston, Philly, New York, or Washington. Those are the four they want to go to. So if you'll look outside, there are gems to be found, and Case Western is one of them. And it's still in a city. You get to be in a city. So shout out, first of all, to Rob Lucchese, one of the real impressive reps I meet on the road here. I met with him last year. His presentation was so good this year. I said, can we meet again? So we grabbed dessert, followed up, and I just picked his brain. Here's some things you need to know about Case Western Reserve. It's a private medium research university between 5,200 and 5,300 students located in Cleveland, right in a real exciting part of Cleveland. And some of the distinctive strengths about Case Western Reserve, one is their robust advising. So they have what they call a navigator, which is really cool. Before you even get to campus, you get assigned your navigator. And this navigator helps you introduce you to all of the resources that Case has to offer. So before you even arrive, they've already connected you to a lot of key people and made sure that your schedule is all set. A second key of a Case Western Reserve, probably this is the main thing, is experiential education. This would really be their hallmark. So whether it's pre-med or pre-dental, they're going to give you experiential education. So they share a neighborhood with some of the best hospitals in the world. Have you ever heard of the Cleveland Clinic, Anika?
I have not.
Well, it's regarded by a lot of people as one of the top hospitals in the world. It is right by Case. And so if you're interested in dentistry, guess what? You get to work in a dental clinic. If you're interested in engineering, I love co-ops, Anika.
Mm-hmm.
7-month paid co-op. 7 months.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
Yes. 7 months. You're not in school. You are working and making money. 40% of students go abroad, all 7 continents. They're big on service learning. They have internships throughout the city of Cleveland. Another key factor that distinguishes Case is their single door admission policy. And what I mean by that is so many different times for different schools, you'd have to apply to a major or apply to a college, and it's hard to switch majors. Or maybe you apply generally to get into the college, but then once you're in a year or two, you have to apply to the School of Nursing, you have to apply to the School of Business. With Case, once you're in, and you have access to all of their programs, so you don't have to worry, am I going to get into engineering or into business or into this program or that program. Now, there is one exception. There's always an exception, right? There is one exception, and that is their music program. So that is one that you do have to apply into. But other than music, everything else, single door admission policy. And that's not just for pre-med or just for business or for engineering or nursing. By the way, some of the really strong programs would be anything in the health sciences at all. Very, very strong. Anything in engineering, really, really, really strong. Biomedical engineering, one of their absolute flagship programs. They're actually one of the first in the country to offer that. So very, very, very strong in what's called BME, which is short for biomedical engineering. And that's true whether you're on the pre-med track or you're looking at doing research or you want to pursue medical technology. It's a big enough department so you can actually have multiple pathways. Another one of their strong programs is neural pathways. They develop prosthetics that allow people to feel there, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of students will double major there or minor. They do a lot of cool stuff with artificial intelligence, combining both computer science and cognitive science. It's an interdisciplinary program that they have. They have some other programs that are also really, really strong as well. Of course, I've mentioned, their music program before and how really cool that is. That's a signature program. It's even a destination program. So it's not a BFA, but it is a bachelor's in music. And what's really cool is it's audition-based, it's performance-based, and you get to take your license with the Cleveland Institute of Music faculty, a very renowned place to study. And so you're working actually with the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra. So with those conservatory students who are taking musicology and music history. So it's pretty cool. It's an exchange really between both of them, which makes it a really, really strong program. They do have a dual degree program with the conservatory. That's a 5-year program, but that's really just straight up for professional musicians. Most of the people that go to CASE are going to want to combine that and still have that research base, powerhouse in engineering, powerhouse in the sciences. Another strong program would be their theater program because they have a very strong MFA. Do you know what MFA stands for, Anika?
Is it Masters of Fine Arts?
Oh, good job. So what happens is you get to take classes with the same, so they have a very strong MFA. And so as an undergrad, you get to take the same acting classes with the same professors who teach in the MFA program.
Oh, wow.
Dance is a strong program as well. You're working with the same professors in the MFA. It's a small program. So it's not a big one, but it's a good program as well. And then they have their, of course, engineering. Like they're really, really known for engineering. But they also have their Weatherhead School of Management, which is a strong program. Finance is strong. Economics is strong. Supply chain management, organizational development, all of that stuff with plenty of opportunities. And then international business would also be good. And believe it or not, they have a really cool program in the humanities. Now, it's a small program, but somebody gave a boatload of money, and it had to be either Baker or Nord because the name is the Baker Nord Fellowship. And it's in its 4th year. And the cool thing about that program is it comes with a lot of funding and a lot of mentorship. So there's large grants in there. And so there's grants like to go abroad, travel grants, mentorship grants. And so you get to study and work with the faculty in art history and then go to another country and look at their museums and that kind of thing. So it's a fantastic program. CASE has a lot of merit scholarship money too. So if you are that top kid and you're scared away by a $70,000 sticker price, they give up to $30,000 in merit scholarship money. So it's a super academic conference. They're in what's called the University Athletic School Conference. So that's the same athletic league as Emory, NYU, WashU, Carnegie Mellon, University of Chicago, Brandeis. These are all really large D3 schools, but they're really academic. So if you want to travel for your sports, you want to be in a community of scholars, but you're still an athlete, then there's schools in that conference that are up in New England, Brandeis up there. You've got schools in the Mid-Atlantic in that conference, like an NYU and Carnegie Mellon. And then you've got schools in the Midwest, like WashU and the University of Chicago, and then Emory in the South. So you get to travel all around if that's kind of your thing. And so it's one of the super academic conferences that's, along with the Ivy League and the NESCAC and the Patriot League. Those are 4 of your really academic athletic conferences. So I just think it's a really good place. And anything at all? Any questions all about Case Western Reserve, Anika?
How hard is it to get into this place?
Yeah, so the acceptance rate is just a little bit under 30%, which is competitive, but it's not brutally competitive, right?
Okay.
And so, they're going to be interested in a B+ kind of student that's got good recommendations and that's done well, so that's another thing. It's competitive, but it's not outrageously competitive.
Okay.
Oh, they also meet 100% of demonstrated needs. So they're one of the 70 schools that does that.
Nice. Okay.
So they can be really generous if it's a lower income family that needs a lot of financial aid. So I just think they're one of the gems out here. and I wanted to give them, am I saying this right? A little shine, or is that, no, shine is negative, isn't it?
No, shine is positive.
Oh, okay. What's that negative thing? You see how bad I am on vocabulary.
Shade, Mark. No
shade. Oh, shade is negative. That's it. I confuse shine and shade. You see how out of it I am?
Oh, God. And
that's why my kids are like, stop trying to use that language. You're not allowed to talk like that.
You got me over here second guessing, Mark. Lord Jesus.
So I gave Case Western Reserve some shine because I believe they deserve it. And one of my students last year is there.
Oh.
Excited.
Love it.
Anika, I'm excited about recording 87 with you this weekend. Let's get something on the calendar because my weekend's starting to fill up.
Yeah, Javon was like, what number are y'all on? I told him 86. He's like, oh my God, you're almost done. I'm like, yeah, no.
You said almost done.
Yeah,
you said John is 11 years old. I'm not almost done.
Right.
But think how knowledgeable you're going to be when John is 15. Oh, my goodness.
Let me tell you something. John is going to be on fire. You hear me? Jalen was the guinea pig. Janaea was like, okay, we got this almost. And then John's just like, okay, guys, we got this.
I'm going to start calling by his middle name. He's not going to be Johnny. He's going to be Andrew.
Andrew.
It's going to be Andrew. Oh, Nick, I have so much fun coming on here with you. Thank you so much for... we're coming up for our 20th month, and I am having a blast. So thank you so much for doing this. Like, this is what I do every day, all day. You're like a mom putting in all this time, and I appreciate it.
No, thank you, Mark. Thank you. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you found this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that could really use this information. Your College Bound Kid is produced by John Lockenbaugh. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Andrea Togo. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. If you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer on the show, please email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. That's questions with an S at yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions, so send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, which is just simply yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.